Guys, good morning.
Is that it, or you need more?
I think that's good.
We'll call this meeting of the Capital Program Committee to order December 13th, a little after 10:30. No members of the public here for public comment. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
And that's adopted unanimously. Do we have minutes? I'm sorry, can I have a copy of the agenda?
Here you go.
Oh, thank you. We'll share.
No, you go.
Approval agenda, public comments, no members of the public. Review and approval of the minutes from November 19th. Thank you. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, so that'll carry, except for me, I'm gonna abstain. And I just haven't reviewed them thoroughly. We're gonna move right into, we got a couple more another member will be showing up momentarily, Nat. We're gonna move into the individual requests, discussion to try and get those wrapped up. So what we have, just kind of lay the groundwork here, if I may. In our summary sheet, and forgive me guys, I do have my phone on. I have a potential call that's kind of on an emergency basis, so if it rings, I will have to excuse myself. Okay, so what we have is our summary sheet, typical what we used last year. I'll list each of the requests and a bunch of other relevant information, all of which, or most of which you're all aware of. What I'm hoping to do today is address through town admin and finance, Libby and Brian, the funding, some discussion on funding sources, and then start to discuss how we're going to kind of package these up. There's approximately $103 million total in FY20 requests, and I think we should maybe have a preliminary discussion on that number as relates to the requests, and maybe how we would break the requests down, those that will move forward and those that need discussion relative to the bigger number. And then there's some other things we need to talk about with respect to individual requests that I'm not going to make it more complicated by talking about now. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So Brian, if you may, or Libby, if you want to talk about what you're thinking on funding sources and dollar amounts and...
Okay, we haven't finalized our recommendations yet. We've been entirely focused on the fiscal 20 general fund budget, which we are giving a presentation to the board on next week. And it's a very large, detailed matter, so we haven't focused on capital as much as we should have, plus there's some other issues that have come up. In any event, what we overall have generally talked about is the $9.5 million in free cash. We've talked about somewhere between 5 and 6 for capital projects. The rest of the capital projects that we feel strongly about would be either through capital exclusions and debt exclusions. And I think the bigger ones, obviously, are the debt exclusion ones. For example, the town pier. That's the biggest one that jumps to my mind right now. There may be another. Surfside area roads too. There's the minimum capital funding requirement, which can also fund some capital, and we've got the rest of the free cash would be existing debt service that needs to be covered because we weren't able to cover it at the special town meeting. We've got capital stabilization fund that we want to put some money into, and we have one-time expense increase requests from the operating budget that we want to fund. But we haven't totally finalized the numbers, but I think, Brian, correct me if this doesn't seem right, that we've talked between 5 and 6 for capital.
We have talked about between 5 and 6.
as a free cash funding, and the rest
cash.
would be debt exclusion. Some may be capital exclusion, small
We've
items
talked-
that can be
we've
paid
talked
off in a
about
year.
We've talked about a capital exclusion. The 1% funding is $974,276. And
Okay. So, and then, obviously those are numbers, and then anything that we would make a recommendation that the finance committee, the select board, really the select board put forth through town admin would be to the voters. to
Yeah.
make a determination.
Yeah, there's a couple of large outstanding items that the board hasn't totally resolved yet, which is Old South Road and Milestone Road corridor
Yeah.
projects, and the most recent discussion had to do with narrowing those down to perhaps something like one or two projects, possibly roundabout at Fairgrounds and Old South, Rotary at Milestone. Rotary at Milestone would be at least partially, mostly covered by state funding. But that's, those were, I guess, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, those were the two projects that seemed like the board was focusing on, but we have not finished the discussion.
And then, so thank you, Libby. And then the other thing to keep in mind is the offset, in terms of the overall number. The offset may be, we still don't know where we are with we're waiting for a finalization of the consultant report for capping cells, and that's carried currently as a $14 million request. So, I mean, that could be eaten up pretty quickly with some of the other stuff. So, so along those lines, we are, we've got some, I would just kind of set the table. There's a couple other comments I think that are relevant. We've got Rory request forms we need to get in. The mechanism by which we would maybe kind of package these up that I was going to propose was, I think, rational and reasonable. Is we've got 87 requests. It works out to be that the average, based upon the current Rory information we have from the group, is approximately 47% as a total value. And that we might focus based on the fact that anything below the average is the criteria under our financial policies and procedures. So that anything below the average seems to me to be the most ripe for discussion for perhaps not funding it. That might be one way to tackle it. That makes the most sense because, again, it relies on the financial policies and procedures. The concern there, the only concern there is that we don't have all the information. We have approximately more than half the requests that could swing in the valuation from between as a maximum 14% and 56%. And I didn't catch that until this morning, and I stopped down to finance, and Brian explained to me what was going on there, and it's really on us. It's not on finance. They're doing the best they can, and with everything else that's going on, and everybody's got these conflicting priorities, unfortunately. The end result of that is what I'd hoped to do was kind of get all this formulated with preliminary discussion today and finalized tomorrow so we could give up-down votes to the town manager. And I could be working on all those background details for each request that are required to formulate a report. That's not going to happen. Where I'm going to propose, based upon what finance department staff, other obligations they have, that anyone who has outstanding Rorys would get them in by noon tomorrow. We'd cancel our meeting tomorrow, have them in by noon tomorrow. And this is all hopeful that you will all be here available Tuesday next week so that we can do an up-down vote. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm just trying to float that out. It's kind of an emergent thing. I was drilling through the Rorys. I was curious, I was looking at some of the swings in the valuations, and I was kind of curious what different people were putting them in, and that's when I realized there was an issue.
An issue of not all have been submitted, is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of them, some requests, it's on average it's 2 persons per request, and I don't think naming anyone is important. It's a process, and we're trying to get through it. I think it's going to, we've discussed other solutions and where we're going with the database and the inputs, and I think that will make it easier for people to actually do that at the meeting. And so I'm hopeful that going forward next year we're not going to have continued issues. So that's kind of that's kind of where we are. I guess if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, now's the time to voice them. And if not, we're going to get started with actually getting something done. Yeah.
Just curious, so you said the average Rory score was 47%? Is that what that
Yeah,
was?
based upon what's been submitted to date.
Is that just for us, or is that including town admin?
Just us.
Just us.
Right.
Okay. And so you're saying that's kind of our baseline for anything over that. We're assuming that we're all more on board with than not, and anything under that we should be reviewing as a group to kind of work through.
Actually, along those lines, what I'm proposing, what I'm actually proposing is, that's what I was gonna propose. What I'm proposing is we need to get that number by getting the forms in, so we'll do that process Tuesday.
Whatever that actual average is.
Right,
Gotcha.
but,
Those forms are in.
and not to say that anything above what the average is automatically in, and
Right.
what below is, but I just thought that that might be a good way for us to frame discussion, because we have 87 requests we need to get through. And that would give us kind of a line to be looking on either side of. Anything well below the line, certainly we would discuss more to determine whether it got funded. And anything above the line that's close to it, we might also. But there's nothing to preclude any one of us. We were gonna do something similar to town meeting where we just
Call
go,
anything over that
you go through
baseline.
and you call it. Go ahead.
Was that a simple average or a weighted average? For the
Simple, I did,
simple average?
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
If it's not too many, would it be possible to show those ones that are approved by way of the percent? So that and just put those aside? I'd just like to know exactly which ones.
Yeah, I didn't,
I know you said that.
last night around, last night around 8 o'clock, I started to dig into that, and I found them, and I kind of marked off which ones, but I don't have it
Yeah.
marked off here. How this works is there's a spreadsheet that actually has each of the Rory forms for each request as a tab, as under in the workbook. So I just marked each of those. I didn't actually mark it on this sheet. So it's a good question, and we'd be able to move forward with some of these, but there was no way for me to have time to get
Yeah,
to it.
that's just be nice to know which ones are,
Yeah.
you know, approved by way of our.
Which
ours.
ones we've all submitted on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say approved, do you mean above that average?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, once we get all the Rory forms in, we could sort
I just-
by percent
Yeah.
of our,
And-
Well, the other-
common findings, and then take over the average and
Right, and they-
separate those out and go through and pull any out that we want to discuss. Then we can discuss all the ones under it, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah, I just think it would make what's left over much more mentally
Identifiable.
manageable, now that we know that.
Right, the only other consideration I had for that is that since we don't actually have, there is such a wide swing in some of them, the total average may change enough that it just made sense to proceed and get everything together once. I mean, as a volunteer board, we gotta have the information in front of
Right.
us. There's a lot going on behind the scenes as it is. So I think what I was hoping to do is we would still at least talk about some of these. And see, sorry. I think that along the lines, Chrissy, what you're suggesting, I think there's some, forgive me, but no-brainers. And we could kind of go through and we could address those. And what I would do is I would suggest we do it as a two-part, I'll present them this way. I'll present whether we want to talk about an individual request and whether we think, or whether we think that it's just, as a group, that there's consensus to move it forward.
For legal requirement, I mean, are those already taken off the list? Those are going forward.
If I may ask, if you would monitor that column while we're talking and point it out, or any of the others. Yeah, I mean, it would be great. So, clearly, starting from the top, is everybody good with proceeding this way, or is?
Yeah.
Okay. Placeholders, I think, is the great example that capping the cells, is we've got to hold that off for discussion. So, or do you want to talk about it and we vote on the concept? We're not making an actual vote. I'm just saying in terms of what we will be putting in the hopper. Do we feel that the value of the work is required and therefore we do it regardless of the price?
I mean,
Where are we on legal requirement on that?
It is going to be a legal mandate.
Well, then that's not a good example, obviously, because it's the legal requirement.
Yeah.
Peter, come on, you were
well,
supposed
do
to.
we know that do we know that that's actually going through this year also, or is that possibly getting pushed out?
Yeah.
Rob and I talked about it the other day. I've just asked him when he expects the consultant's report and a final cost. So I believe we are expecting something to happen in 20, although it may be more design rather
So
than construction.
much lower
Construction might actually be
request.
in 21, but it's a little bit up in the air. He was having discussions with DEP this week. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, Christie.
Does this, Libby, does this work align in any way with the contract with Waste Options?
not the waste services agreement,
Okay.
really. We would probably, if they're gonna do the work, or we haven't even gotten that far
Okay.
yet. But there's a whole prevailing wage thing.
All right, so, I mean, I think it's fair to say that capping the cells, it's a legal requirement, we know it's a placeholder. The final cost is gonna be dictated by a procurement process. It's gonna have to go out to bid. The number is going to be what it's going to be, and we don't have much, unfortunately, of a choice in that. So I would suggest that that one would go into for group vote, to be recommended. And that, in addition, we understand that it's a placeholder. It's a scope of work with the dollar amount as of yet undetermined.
Yep, makes sense.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so that's a hopper. So facility access road and parking lot maintenance. Anyone,
Base funding, 500.
so this comes in, okay, so this is where, just as an example,
Right.
we're at 51%. So what I had hoped to do was say, okay, 51%, any
the
concerns, it goes in the hopper. The next one, repair electrical systems, the MRF, 44%. It's below the average. Do we want to hold it off for further discussion and see where we end up as a total number for what is above the average? You know, so we have a handle on dollar numbers. Or do you want to handle it a different way?
I mean, these are kind of like soft, putting it on the side.
Yes,
We figure out
yes,
all the
yeah,
no-brainers,
yeah.
and then we go back to the soft. We'll revisit these. It's not like
Yes.
this one's going to the bottom of the list.
No, correct. It's
So-
that, we're putting it aside. So we'll hold that one out. That one will be for discussion, I suppose, at this point. And the discussion may be really quick once we have the averages.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
If for some reason with any of these items, if by chance town administration or finance knows the funding source, could they let us know?
Yeah. Well-
If there's a few that,
Yeah.
you know, I
Yeah.
don't know.
The
Yes.
solid wastes are unknown at
Thank
this
you.
time.
And also, I mean, it's good to know if there's a dedicated source, so that there might be something that would underwrite or subsidize it.
Stephen, just a
Yeah.
quick question. On the town admin scores, the Rory scores,
Mm-hmm.
what is their threshold number? It's different from ours?
It is, and I wasn't even gonna present that yet until we get more into, less out of the preliminary and more into the making decisions group.
Okay.
So we only want to focus on our.
I mean, that's what I was
for
doing.
now.
I mean,
No,
not
that's
to say
fine.
that we can't
No,
look at
that's-
them.
That's fine.
We certainly can look at
I
the
think
individual.
When I make my final vote, I'm gonna look and see what town that.
Yes, and I encourage us to even discuss them. Just at this point, I thought we would perhaps select out those based upon our own averages. With the benefit of the town manager and Libby and Brian here, so that they can help us out if they have specific information. That's why I didn't want to cancel today's meeting. Okay, so the repair electrical systems, MRF, I guess we're just going to use these averages for the moment. We just discussed that would be under a further discussion. The floor drain, same, unless someone would say otherwise, please let me know. The overhead doors and the fire alarm system, I mean, they're just on the other side of the line. They're not, I think mandatory, I think it's good. Personally, I'm just saying, to give an example, it's good management to be taking care of these things in advance. But where they are, in terms of this discussion, kind of straddles the line. Do we want to keep them in the soft discussion category for the moment? Until we have
Well-
hard averages?
we don't have a choice because of the percentages,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Well, so the fire alarm system's legal requirement, so that one's
Oh, thank you,
getting
Peter.
pushed, yep.
Okay, so that goes in the hopper.
I mean, overhead doors sounded more like a safety issue than just a maintenance issue, personally, so, and considering it's over the 47%, I would probably keep that in the hopper.
Yeah, and I mean,
That's the way you use that.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to backtrack because I got my sheet folded up here. I don't want to lose perspective. We're talking about relatively small dollars here, 50,000, 100,000, 50,000 for things that are, deemed to be necessary by the department head. So we'll keep that in mind for our discussion tomorrow, or Tuesday rather. We're going to jump down. The unlined landfill mining, I think, is in the same category as the capping the cells.
Legal requirement.
Legal requirement. The money, the cost is the cost. It's been annually $700,000, I believe, or thereabouts. So we would just put that in the hopper. Is that what we're
It's
thinking?
recurring also.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to jump down to facilities. Annual facility roof repairs, annual facility ADA accessibility upgrades, annual facility utility updates, all are in the 47, 49% grouping. This whole category, all the way down to the DPW garage and campus, are around, well, with the exception of one, they're around with the exception of a couple, they're around $500,000. Thoughts on those?
Accessibility, utility, paving, bathroom upgrade.
The ADA is a legal requirement, so that would go in the hopper. Is there anyone feels that we need to be discussing these individually?
Only maybe the Jetties Beach facility, that's a bigger one.
Okay,
If there's gonna be any discussion, to me, the rest is, we have to put money into our buildings.
okay,
Or it's gonna cost us more down the road.
okay. And then just, this is gonna be like another subcategory, not for our necessarily, it'll be a discussion point for us for in the report. And that's that some of these will have an individual recommendation, kind of as a footnote to indicate that, the capital committee supports this work. However, we, believe strongly that an inventory of intended work as compared to previous year's work should become a regular part of the process so that it's clear to people that it's a line item that says annual this and it's a dollar amount, but that we're tracking it, and we believe that that's an important thing to do. Is that something you guys agree with, or? Put it in the report? I mean, it's not a big deal, it's just a footnote. I just want to make sure, I've been trying to forecast through what the report's going to include, and a lot of it's going to be what was in it last year, but then there'll be some additional stuff.
Mr. Chairman, one thing about on the facilities.
Yeah, please.
We can't always, recommend things because, we can rely 100% on the department head and the people there. But I would say that DPW with the new director, he has 2 new deputies, facilities manager. 3 years ago, I wouldn't probably suggested this, because I don't think we had the manpower to really implement it. But I think they do now. So that kind of leads me toward the side of recommending the majority of this. Just wanted to put that in.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we haven't addressed, which I hope to next season, is the risk. So one of those risks is, do they have the capacity? And it's not a risk like we're going to lose stuff, but it's a risk in terms of, do they have the capacity to do it in the fiscal year that they're requesting it? And part of that relates to the cost. So it's not a column we currently have, but it speaks to what you just said. They had the capacity, so let's do it.
Right, to accomplish it, and also to do it well.
Yes, yeah, which is important. Okay. So any of those, are we considering additional discussion other than Jetties Beach?
I mean, I wouldn't consider additional discussion, but if we are putting some of these aside to see how our funding looks and then figuring out what else we can add to it,
Yeah.
I might consider the lighting updates. I know it's only 103,000, but again, I think that everyone's going to be able to still operate in their building without these lighting updates, assuming that we couldn't fund it. Now, I'm not saying that we wouldn't fund it, but if we're just putting stuff on the side to see where we are after everything that we know we need for legal requirements and for imminent threat and
Yeah.
everything else, and I mean, it was a 38%, so that's pretty low relative to our baseline also. So
Yeah.
I don't think that that's crazy to put it on the side. You know,
Okay.
that's kind of the exercise we're shooting for.
I think so, and so Peter, I'll just put it down as a discussion, but I just want to be clear too, along those lines. The hopper this is a soft preliminary. What we're trying to, the purpose of this exercise today is to give us a little bit of a better sense of where we'll be when we vote, when we actually do a more formal approach, kind of limit that discussion necessarily so we can have it. But the more, as important, we need to give Brian a list so he can start thinking about actual funding more specifically so that he can get back to us about it when we meet again. So that's why we're kind of doing this. It may seem like we're taking one step forward, but we're going to go 2 steps back by redoing this next week. But it's just part of the process.
Right.
Chrissy?
Peter brings up a good point in that this exercise, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea to note those items that we'd consider omitting. Once we've gone through it all, it's hard to say if we're going to omit it now because we don't know what's
Sure.
going on down the road. But
Yeah.
it's nice to know that maybe that's on the list for
Things that
omitting.
could be gone without.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then we're it's just another step of trying to figure out what we'd omit if we had to.
If we had to go back and do that again. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it might be worthwhile. I guess what it's going to boil down to is we're going to have a discussion as a group on anything we're going to admit. So I'm not trying to preclude that as a possibility, but I would suggest let's all keep that in mind, that something could be omitted, and we'll mark it as a discussion item, and that all of these can be revisited once we get some harder dollar number potentials from finance. Okay, so Jetty Beach discussed, the DPW garage and campus is an out year. Fleet management, okay, so these were, the proposals or the preliminary funding source for this is recommended to be a capital exclusion. So basically that would be something that is, short-term.
So it looks like everything but the loader
I was just thinking.
is well under the threshold, so.
Did you
Yeah.
look at the town admin?
Pardon me?
Did you look at the town admin, Rich?
Yes. Right there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So those, I mean, I would put these as one category of discussion with a question mark.
What is the reason for the highlight of the service response truck?
I think it was one that none of us agreed with.
Okay.
Well.
Yeah, it was
That's what I
the
recall.
Yeah.
Were you at that meeting?
Was it
I
the-
missed so many and you missed a couple
Wasn't
and I was
just the-
No, I
there.
was there.
extra van
explained-
for them
Yeah,
to
it just
use
was-
instead of their own cars.
Yeah, that's right.
No,
No.
Oh no, this
Oh,
was
no, no, no.
the
this is the, let's
demolisher.
just call it the pretend tow truck. This is like a truck that is like road service vehicle, but not, you know what I mean? Like, we don't tow vehicles here. We pull them with a rope.
to highlight passenger?
I'm pretty sure that this was something to do with servicing a vehicle that breaks down. I believe that's what this was.
Oh.
Service response,
This
I'm
wasn't
pretty
the
sure.
Right.
Terminator or whatever it was with the articulating crane.
Dominator.
Yeah.
So
I would
guys,
call it.
can I jump in just to give some clarification? So first of all, the highlighting is because there's a question mark with respect to what the final cost was that we wanted to confirm with Rob McNeil, DPW Director.
Yeah.
And then the original request came in for the chassis without the crane on the back. And then Rob had updated to indicate that he was gonna do the whole package, and it's basically a wrecker, so they can go out and bring stuff back. And then, just to differentiate, I'm not talking one over the other, but the passenger vehicle was a van for staff.
Yes.
And I think that was one that we had said, well, if push comes to shove, I don't really see that as a big thing.
Back burner.
So I don't know if that helps you with the discussion, but my suggestion is, because we're not actually doing a vote right now, we're just going through the process of identifying what we're gonna discuss more, is we would just put this category of fleet management under a discussion as a whole.
I agree.
Is that okay?
Especially based on the rankings, I would say. I would
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay, because then that gives us an opportunity to move forward to the GIS data integration, which DPW, which I think will go into the same category under the fleet as a discussion question mark. unless anyone thinks otherwise. Stormwater moved out to FY '21. DPW, parking improvements to Fairground Road. That came in under, so I guess we'll have that as a discussion on averages.
Steve?
Yes, sir.
Right there.
I'm sorry, one more question on the Rory scores.
Yeah,
These percents, are these based on the ones that have been submitted, or are they based on the number of numbers in this committee?
So you're asking if they include zeros for people that haven't
Correct.
submitted them? Yeah, that's a good question.
they do, and that's why we need to update them in order to have a,
Oh,
and that's why the
That's why they're
values.
so low.
right.
That's why the value swing could, well, keep in mind that it's a average of a percentage of 7. So the maximum it could be for if one person
2 sevens.
hasn't voted is 14% increase
Gotcha.
for one request. That is if they vote 100% on everything.
But they couldn't drop any lower based on people submitting more.
Correct,
Rory
they
forms.
can't drop any lower, so we do have a bottom line, but we don't have
Right.
a top line. The
That's what I'm
problem is that some of the requests are missing 2 and some are missing 4, so I'm trying to keep it a
average.
little less specific and just move through it so we can be, Peter?
Not to feel like Debbie Downer, but doesn't it feel like we're maybe wasting our time here now because of the ROIs can fluctuate such that we may not even talk about an item because it may go from call it 45% to 50 or 52.
Right.
I just feel, I just feel like we're gonna regurgitate. We should wait for everyone to have their numbers in and then do it one time. It's just me.
I get that, I'm just trying to also address,
I have a lot to do,
let me see if I
not just
can,
at this table,
let me see if I can help address that.
please. Because I feel like
I understand, and I'm
wasting
sitting here and I'm, your face is say and I understand, and
yeah.
I'm trying to manage.
I was gonna ask you for a Snickers bar, but that would be. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple things here. One is,
Sorry.
there's a mechanism to address the change so that we can quickly go through these and this time isn't wasted. And that will just simply be that we add a column for the new values and a column for the deviation, and anything, we'll know right away which ones changed and if they change by more than a couple percentage points. And we can either pull them out of the hopper or pull them into discussion. The other part that's important is I'm looking for information for Brian, because I'm already, I mean, I don't want to get into this a lot because it's kind of a sensitive discussion for a variety of reasons. We currently have a schedule of presenting a report to the selectmen January 4th. 2 weeks of that are holiday. I'm getting pressure at home, I should be on holiday and I'm gonna be writing a report. So the more we can get done now, the more likely we would be to make that date. I'm not even certain we can make that date right now, so that's why I'm just trying to get something done. And if you guys feel like we're wasting our time, I'm not gonna keep you here. I'm just feeling like
Crunch.
there's a lot to do and it's looking more and more impossible, and maybe there'll be a little bit of hope if we can get through some of it and Brian can put some numbers to stuff. Or we identify other issues that we didn't identify yet in discussion that will then hold up our whole process. So if that changes your mind, let me know. Let me know if it didn't change your mind. And I also note that we're almost a third of the way
Right.
through the
I
list.
don't think it's gonna take that long to at least plow through these and
Yeah.
hopper or side play them.
Yeah, as long as we don't get into discussion about the specific topics. Peter, I get your point, man. I'm right there with you, believe me, but I'm just trying to tread water here. Orange Street Bike Path is 61 Hopper. I'm gonna just go through this list. If you guys think discussion is warranted, then say so. Newtown Road improvements, noting that is also a multi-use path. And Brian and Libby, if there's something that you think we need to talk about, just please mention it. Sidewalk improvement plan. I was under the impression that Rob had said that he's got funding in the account and he doesn't want to request additional funds this year because he won't have expended them.
I don't think that's true.
No?
I wasn't here
I
when
just
he met
talked
with
to
you,
him.
so.
Up for
I don't-
discussion.
I don't know.
Okay, so we'll make it a discussion.
Yeah.
Market.
Okay.
Because I think we skipped a year or two.
Yeah,
We need to
it,
get
Well, we reduced
replenished
it
them
last
now.
year.
yeah, so if, if it's not the case and he needs the funding, then it can come out of the discussion category. Because it meets, it's well above our current average. Surfside area roads reconstruction,
I've got a question for Libby.
okay.
Libby, does the sidewalk plan adhere to any ADA stuff? Ever?
Part of it.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Yeah, okay.
A big part of it. Surfside's area roads reconstruction. Road improvement maintenance. Multi-use path maintenance, cobblestone improvement maintenance, and fairgrounds area roadways. Okay, so those are all potentially hopper.
Can I just make a quick little editorial comment?
Yes, please.
Also, some of these are subject to, reducing the number, like 3.7 for road maintenance, that could potentially be something like 1.7.
Actually, that's a good, I have that in my notes. Is this the number we're gonna use?
Yeah, just more consideration.
Okay, thank you for. Okay. Winnett Road shared, that's less than our average, that's a discussion. Tom Nevers bike path, I guess that's borderline, potentially discussion. Decommissioning fire cisterns is hopper. We do have the Old South Milestone as a placeholder, it's not on our sheets. Police Marine, Harbor Master Industry Road layup, was that moving into this year, or it's gonna stay? It was in FY '20 and it's gonna move to, it is gonna move to FY '21? The Harbor Master layup?
No,
I haven't heard, but I will double check. But
Oh, no, this is a different thing.
All right, Town Pier construction, we are gonna eliminate
We're gonna eliminate
this
this one.
request.
Yep.
It's not to be eliminated as a work,
Oh, yeah,
scope of
okay.
work, no, it's going down to the town
We've gone under
admin.
Town admin for
Oh.
5 million, so we're gonna eliminate this line.
Okay.
It's a duplicate.
Get it.
So that goes to town admin?
Yeah, which is already in.
Yeah.
Christie,
Okay,
For a higher number.
at 5 million, so that we're gonna move that down.
okay.
Or-
Uh, Public Safety Auxiliary Building, that's a discussion one, because there's open scope.
Right.
And the maintenance seasonal housing is still a discussion because there's open scope.
Is it Low Beach? Is that?
Yeah, 54 Low Beach. Athletic complex master plan, Backus Lane playing fields, NPS building improvements, handheld radio replacement, NPS land acquisition, that's discussion. There'll be, we're not gonna get into it today, but I'll make a recommendation to you all, or a suggestion that we do an individual recommendation on that, broader town issues. The NPS Central Office Edition is clearly perhaps one of those under omit, the way that the score is. We'll put it in as discussion item. Fire all look to be hopper, unless anyone thinks otherwise. Again, guys, I appreciate, let's get through this. If there's any that we need to identify additional information on, we'll know today. Let's see, our island home, the flooring,
I think we figured out what they're doing with that last meeting, right? So that was easy.
the
At
only
least what
question.
I, you know,
The only thing I want to ask on that, Nat, is, is whether it's actually a legal requirement or not. So can we find that out? Because that might.
The floor?
Well, yeah, I mean, if people filled out the Rory thinking it was a legal requirement, they may have a different observation when we actually have discussion. So I'm going to put that in as a discussion, but we do need to find out if it's a legal requirement. Wanacommet and Sconset are hopper. The new source investigation and the water main replacement. And I'll note that those actually scores I think will be higher because there is, I know that those were some Rory's not turned in. The airport has some Rory's that were not turned in, so some of these may come out of the hopper, or out of the discussion grouping. Pylons, sanitary sewer upgrade, hopper. The maintenance vehicle replacement discussion. Hopper for the paint and beads, ecological restoration equipment, discussion. Taxiway Echo, I know there were some missing, and the security project, there were some missing. Yeah, no,
No, all good, I got them right here, but they were just single items versus the group.
yeah,
On
yeah.
that thing,
It's,
so,
no
for
one's,
whatever
I'm not
reason.
pointing fingers at anybody. We just gotta, trying to buck down here. Network infrastructure, good to go, right? Hopper, replace the town computers and printers, which is a phase funding, Hopper. E-permitting is missing some, so that'll be a discussion.
I think we need information, I checked into this e-permitting, now I understand what it is, and it makes sense, but I don't think everybody, I don't think there was a, solid understanding of that.
What it was.
Low score, and it really isn't a big deal.
Okay, so
I'm
let's,
it's sort of like the shredding thing, or whatever it is,
Right.
upgrading, it's just a
okay,
good
so
idea.
we'll keep that under the discussion items until, and then we can get into any details, if any, along the lines of what Nat's saying, if we want to move that forward. Sewer, current force main assessment inspections, that's a legal requirement. The CMOM is actually also a legal requirement.
I would call CMOB a legal requirement.
CMOM's listed as legal requirement, I think the
First one
forest main
wasn't.
inspection wasn't,
Yeah,
You
force
might
main
be.
inspection.
Oh,
Awful.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm looking
but still very important.
without the newly
Yeah.
acquired
You
bifocals
need
on.
magnifying glass today with these, getting smaller.
Don't worry, Nat, you're gonna need the bifocals. Perimeter fencing, we still need a number on that, right? It's $8 a foot is the basis, we just need to know the lineal feet. So that's a discussion. Surfside wastewater, okay, Brian, did you get an update on where that is? Is this the
Which one?
Surfside wastewater?
Phase two upgrade.
Is this,
We haven't even begun the discussion on even a preliminary design, which we had allocated 600,000 for last year.
okay, so just, and this is just so we get this stuff out of the way now and make sure we're all clear. When David had come in, he had suggested that the dollar number would be substantially lower because we would be able to do a new membrane technology, and but what wasn't clear is that was all he was gonna be requesting for FY '20. Subsequent discussion indicates that we should be seeking authorization for the full amount required to do the full scope of work, as opposed to just the membrane, correct?
Depending on what comes out of the design, which I
Right.
think that's the anticipation.
Right, and that's what the dollar number is based on?
Yes.
Okay, so just because there was some discussion about a substantially lower number, I think it was like 10% of what was there. So that's Hopper. National Grid, that is missing individuals. That will be a discussion. Jetties Beach, Hopper. I'm going through these, you guys, if you have any questions that we think are relevant for town admin, because Libby won't be here, maybe next Tuesday, I'm not sure. Replace loader, discussion.
Interesting, we had the same percent as the loader for
DPW.
yeah.
Replace sewer rotting truck, discussion. Wait, am I behind in my discussion marks? Yes, I am, I'm sorry. Wisconsin Design and Construction, Hopper. New sewer forest main design and planning, Hopper. Pump station upgrades, Aurora Way, Hopper. New excavation equipment, discussion. All right, guys, we're in the end here. Seasonal employee housing feasibility study, it's on the borderline. I would say discussion. This item, the coastal resiliency plan, the Baxter Road relocation as relates to coastal resiliency, as relates to what we're facing without a coastal resiliency plan, and the strategic planning, I would like to suggest that we do in our report, again, as more of a footnote, this isn't a central feature of the report, an individualized recommendation that talks about the planning and our you know, our recommendation about the investment in planning, in addition to things that need to be replaced or fixed every year, and that it's an important focus. And obviously, this would be all subject to your review and a draft, but before I start doing that, I want to make sure you guys think it's worth putting in there. So in short, do we want to say something about planning is important and we need to be funding it?
Sure. It is.
Is the new facilities guy who just got hired, is that something that we may wanna consider? I don't know, there's gonna be, I don't wanna say changes, but better from within, it's improvement. So, we're sort of in this process here, but there's.
He's not handling any of this.
He's not?
He's facilities.
Oh.
Yeah, and I really.
Well, I mean, you mentioned fixing things, like I thought.
No,
that-
all I was trying to say is that
Buildings.
do we want to,
No, no.
do we want to create a statement that indicates that we support the town investing more money in the planning process for these types of projects? And I think it's an important discussion for us to have. It doesn't have to be a long discussion. It doesn't have to be a long statement, but there's a difference between us talking about that as a group
Yeah.
in a meeting and having it in an actual official report.
Okay, I see
So
what
that's
you're
all I was saying.
now. Oh, I
Can
got
I
it.
just quickly go through these a little bit?
Yeah, please.
Okay, we internally need to do our own Rory's, I realize. So town care supplemental funding comes here from police. Traffic modeling, that's a select board, request. We'll get our Rory in on that. Townwide document management is ongoing.
Can you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can you Brian, on the list there is to verify that that's a real-time modeling software solution?
It's my understanding it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I can cross that off.
We will double check that, but
We can add that, those words to the description. Coastal resiliency plan, we don't know yet, but this would be, probably a project coming out of, that's a guess number. Baxter Road relocation, this is planning, and, this is something that's sort of started, but we're gonna need more money to do a real plan for the relocation. The meeting room trailer is something of a placeholder, as is the central fire station reuse. There is another initiative going on, looking at the fire station old site for housing by the Affordable Housing Trust. So when they get back to us, we'll know if we're gonna kind of abandon this or go with, or not. Strategic planning, actually, I think this was an early item. We can probably take this out, because in our operations budget, we have over 100, I think, programmed in for strategic planning. So we can remove this item.
Okay.
Senior center relocation, we should add the word, something like site design, space needs, something like that. And that number, I need to talk to them, but that number came from the town of Chatham. They are a little ahead of us in planning for a senior center, but they appropriated $100,000 at their 2018 annual town meeting for theirs. So I just added all that.
Yeah.
For us.
Okay.
And by the way, if anybody, I know you've already heard it, but, well, hopefully some of you will be at our meeting next week anyway, if you're interested in the general fund budget, but the senior center group is coming to the board meeting next week to give the report, but they already came here,
Yes.
right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, we did meet with
That's
them.
great.
And then, Brian, that'll get a planet number
yes.
and a SIP request form on your end. And then, so, Libby, just with respect to, I mean, I presume that that's something the select board will kind of weigh in on, and, I mean, I can ask Jason, but you're gonna use their input to inform your recommendation, or we consider this a project? Is this currently a placeholder?
I would say it's, I suppose you could say it's tentatively a placeholder, pending the board's more definitive, yes, we're gonna do this. But
Okay.
I believe they will say that,
Okay,
so it's something of a placeholder, right?
okay,
Yeah.
so it's something, okay, great.
It's more of a definitive than a placeholder, but I would still title it a placeholder.
I gotcha.
If we're gonna be.
I gotcha. No, you don't have to, too fine a point is not necessary. Any questions for Brian or Libby? Christie?
Libby, or Brian, is there, I'm looking at the two loaders, we were the same, but you guys, rated the, fleet management DPW like 39 or 38%, and the one for sewer 17. Is there,
I think we felt they could get by another year.
okay.
And
And
this,
they've gotten a
is it-
lot of equipment lately. is what
Can they
Yeah.
get the old one from the DPW?
All over the place.
Right.
Dump one, they kinda sometimes they-
Okay.
are there any others that you guys wanted to, I mean, I think passenger vehicle under fleet management, the town admin's 1% is, it's self-descriptive.
There's a
But are
reason
there
for that.
any other that, I mean, we have them here and Libby is here, so if you just want to quickly look through the TA column for the Rory, and if there's any particular questions, not to put anyone on the, Libby on the spot, but it might be good to ask now, because it will inform our vote, perhaps.
Yeah, and we're gonna need to spend a little time on our end, but before your next meeting somehow, just double checking some of ours. Like, I
Okay.
just made a little note next to some of them to make sure that's what we really meant to do,
Okay.
but there's not like a ton of those.
Christie and then Richard.
I know we've been talking about perimeter fencing for a few years now around is that, if we don't approve that, is that gonna come up year after year?
Probably.
We,
Resilience.
See, my feeling on the perimeter fencing is,
Didn't you
we
reduce
haven't
it?
had perimeter fencing, real perimeter fencing, ever. And
I was
the
gonna say,
idea of fencing around the beds to me is nice, and it's probably better to do that, but it's a lot of money. And I don't know why we'd more put it around the facilities that have the
Facilities,
machinery in
Yeah.
them,
right.
you know,
I just,
systems in them.
it'd be nice if we just said yes or no, going forward. We're either gonna do it, or we're never gonna do it again.
No.
I mean,
He
Yeah.
just wanted to say no, so
For the record.
can someone field me a softball so I can do that too?
I think it comes down to liability versus security. I mean, are we trying to keep ourselves from being liable for people getting into the beds or dogs getting into the beds or whatever it might be? You know, I mean, those things are pretty.
I feel like some signage could help with that. Don't go in here.
Can we
Right,
ask
right.
to maybe, understand and agree? Understand and agree, we've talked about this with respect to insurance, but perhaps we could just get a brief from town council and we could have a definitive and put this to bed. You know, I know in community management, you put up a pool sign and there's certain things you have to say in order to actually demonstrate, care. And that you're not, you're not just trying to throw up an affirmative defense if something happens. So perhaps we can get some feedback and there is a standard that says
Yes.
the beds don't need it, but we need to put up signs, that's all.
Yeah, we'll get
Not for
that.
fencing, I'm not
Well,
saying for
cameras.
fencing.
Yeah, it's my they have cameras out there.
Oh. there we
It's
go.
my understanding that this is not a legal requirement. There's
Right.
no law that says you have to have fencing around your sewer treatment beds. We don't have a fence around the landfill.
I know, I think we just talk about it every year for 15 minutes.
Yeah,
At this point, and when David comes in, and it's just one way or the other if we could put it to
Yeah,
bed.
I mean, it
I know it's
probably-
not the biggest priority in the world for
no,
anyone.
we'll talk to David about it. It's probably is a
Well, it is for David.
recommendation.
Well,
for
yeah, that's true, and I
liability.
don't mean to diminish that, because he's out there and he's trying to do a good job. And he sees this as part of that, so.
one other
Okay,
question.
yeah,
before we-
Christie and then Richard.
Libby, you guys have 100% for the CMOM, that's it? Is there something that's,
That's a legal requirement.
The yeah,
Okay, so
that's- we have an administrative consent order from DEP that says we have to have the
got
same.
it, okay.
Although this is really more the projects that are in the CMOM, but we have to do that.
Yeah.
Stephen, my question
Yes,
for
please.
Libby is, back to the ALS equipment funding. Did we find out what the answer is there?
You're in the fire department.
Because the
Was that what I
town
needed to
admin has it very lowly
Yeah, that
ranked.
was a little question I had. My initial thought was, I wonder if we were thinking that would come out of the ambulance reserve. And I don't know if we had it coming out of there or not, so we need.
So it's not because you don't want it, it has to
No.
do with funding.
And I think we're
Okay.
also gonna double check to see if we already had funding that hasn't been spent yet.
Which we do, because we haven't rolled it out yet, so.
Yeah,
It's in the
so
hopper.
I think we were thinking that we have prior funding that this could probably carry into 21, because we haven't even spent the money yet. 'cause we-
I gotcha.
Does
Okay.
100% of revenue from ambulance go to the fund?
100% of the revenue goes to the ambulance reserve.
Cool.
for expenditure on the ambulance
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay,
Or staff.
Technical terms. Nat?
Traffic model, I wanna just talk quickly about the traffic modeling.
Okay,
thing.
but can I just say one thing? If
What?
we're gonna, if it's gonna be discussion about it, let's save it for when we, well, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's fine.
No, no.
I know where, there's just, this issue is just kind of morphed from planning commission to here and back and forth, and, I think that the number that you put in there is probably pretty accurate as far as if it was one of the existing, this would be kind of a group thing, I think, through, somehow, through one of the companies, one of the consultants that was already sort of working on this, but not completely. But it is somewhat of an open-ended discussion that may not ever have perfect answers.
You mean, in the end?
This whole, yeah, I mean, this is like, kinda like predicting,
Right.
you know, every little thing that happens with every car, trends, roads. It isn't possible, but I think we should move forward with it, only because it's such a hot topic now to try to slow down some of our initiatives to put roundabouts and fix some intersection stuff. It's sort of the new slowdown. This is the Baxter Road with cars, just so you know. So, and I'm being very honest and blunt about it too, because it's getting frustrating for me listening to this, but we should try to do it, even if it sounds wasteful.
Listening to this in his other
It's brutal.
capacities. Yeah.
It's full circle.
It's becoming the new thing to worry about.
Okay, I think the point is well taken, and,
So I support it for a lot more than just its term, okay? Because we need to exercise it just to exercise it.
gotcha. Let it run around the community a
Yeah.
little bit. Get the information out, people need to know
Even
it's
if there
being
is
done.
any.
Are you making that point because we voted 16%? Is that kind of why you pointed that one out?
That and, like, yes.
Just curious.
And it's sort of jumped from planning, and Matt's on the commission as a select board representative. This has been like about 2 years now, this has been coming up. Especially since the Beta Group did the milestone thing. They sort of showed some fancy stuff.
But no
And they show cars moving
background.
around. And it makes you think of something else, and this popped up. Because after you were, no, after you, I can't remember if you were part of that, were there or not, but this, it's hard to explain what this is. This is sort of like this is like climate change, like predicting everything. We just gotta figure it out and move on with this little item, so.
Sounds like a good tool.
Okay, no, Nat, point well taken. So I guess in the town admin categories, anything below our average will go into discussion, anything above will go in the hopper. If it's within a couple of points, it goes into discussion. And then, obviously, we'll very quickly be able to update that, once we get our Rorys in. We'll know if something changed, and, if we have more or less to discuss before we vote. I do have to request respectfully that if you have Rorys out, that you stop everything in your life unless you just can't, and get them in, because we gotta have them to finish this process up. And Brian, they are due when?
Right this
That's
minute.
up to you.
Well, I mean, you need them for, if we're gonna
When are
meet
you gonna do
Tuesday,
Tuesday?
Midnight.
By the end of the day tomorrow would be ideal.
well, I would say before the end of the day tomorrow.
Okay, well,
because-
I was trying to be Johnny, because then it would give us Monday morning to get them in at least, or over the weekend. But-
Well, but I need time to get them and look at them and figure out what we're gonna talk about, so that everybody's having,
So
you know,
then
we're not wasting your time
I'll
too.
defer to you.
I think we can get them all in tomorrow. I have some out.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, if you got them out, there's not many. Peter?
Has Rebecca updated on who's contributed and who hasn't, so that they know?
She's been all over that. She's my new.
I have a whole stack for
You.
for Jason.
Oh, you got mine? I could already had them done.
No.
Oh,
Why
take
did
your
you not give it
time
to me?
now.
See,
He's
that's
holding out.
that's
Think about it.
2 weeks
Boy,
ago, I
I
thought
am
mine were all done,
excited
and then
that
I could have it done.
Rebecca came into
10
the
minutes ago.
packet.
Well, we got an
I finished
hour left in our meeting time, so if anyone wants to sit here and get them done, please do. You can give them to Brian.
No one's leaving until they're all done.
Let me give an extra pencil.
All right. That is,
Oh, come on, I got
I got
a
gnats,
whole,
this is good.
whole box of
I'm
them.
done.
They made progress.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm done.
Let me see your handwriting first.
that's all we
Anything
got.
checks?
There's no committee reports.
checks?
Huh?
Guys,
I'm
I
done with it.
wanna try and wrap this up, because everyone's got other stuff to be doing, and everybody's schedule's gonna be a little discombobulated. Tomorrow we'll have a day off, and Tuesday we're gonna have to meet. There's no committee reports. We'll forego discussion of good of the order at this point, because I need a Snickers. The date of our next meeting will be, I believe, unless posted otherwise on the notice, calendar notice, town meeting will be Tuesday
No, I just
here
thought about it today.
at 10:30 a.m. And if someone has the actual date,
What
please
time do you
volunteer.
wanna do Tuesday, Chairman?
The 18th, I think 10:30.
Don't we have a, Rhode Island Home meeting?
That's at 12:30 to 1.
12:30, yeah.
CLA call.
There goes your day, Peter.
No, because I have a business commitment too in the morning, so.
Okay.
Now I gotta choose.
And any other comments, questions, concerns? Can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you all for your patience.
I just saw Terry's notes, she did put Stephen needs a Snickers.
Stephen needs a Snickers, yeah.